All right, I want to bring in Amit Segal, joining us now from Jerusalem. He is the chief political commentator at Israel's leading news outlet, Channel 12 News, and writes a newsletter called It's Noon in Israel. He's also the author of a new book, A Call at 4 a.m., 13 prime ministers and the crucial decisions that shaped Israeli politics. Yes, AM, crucial to note there. Amit, good to see you. I do want to talk to you about other breaking news that we have been reporting on. I know you've been covering as well, and that is the report that the U.S. Is potentially going to be arming Kurdish fighters to stretch the IRGC fighters there thin. These are well-trained fighters, very well known to the U.S. military, very loyal for so many years there in the region, but it does come with risk. And of course, for those in Iran, the word separatism is a dirty word. And Kurdish population there makes upwards of 10% of the population. There is concern that we've been hearing vocally about the cost of this particular action and what that could mean for fragmenting this country, especially because it is such a pluralistic country, and the last thing they want to see is any sort of fragmentation at this point.
So first of all, the Kurdish minority has had a very fruitful relationship with both the US and Israel over the last 70, almost 80 years. So it's no surprise that there is some sort of cooperation, by the way, at the expense not only of Iran, but Turkey as well. President Erdogan is quite worried about it. However, I don't think President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu want the Kurdish minority to take over Iran. I think that what we see here is yet another example that it's not that Israel and the US are going to bomb Iran for 2, 3, 4 weeks and then to say that the ball is in the court of the protesters. No, there is an organized attempt to shake the foundations of this fundamentalist regime in each and every aspect, be it the Kurdish minority in the West, be it other minorities in the North, and first and foremost, the protesters inside Tehran. From what I'm hearing, there are, I can't spill the beans, unfortunately, because I don't know the secrets, but I'm told that there are 2, 3 more surprises waiting to actually happen when it comes exactly to those aspects. The aspect of the US and Israel, have weakened the regime to a level in which protesters and minorities can actually take the lead.
We've just been reporting on some breaking news from our teams in the UAE and Abu Dhabi, and obviously, the UAE has traditionally been a safe haven for a lot of Westerners that live there. They are more or less sort of a selectively neutral country, so to speak. Just talk to us about Iran's calculus here. The UAE has suffered the brunt of the barrage of projectiles into their country, and you've got Iran essentially lashing out at Gulf neighbors. I believe that one UAE official said that Iran has basically squandered the little goodwill that it actually had in the region with its neighbors. What is Israel's perspective, just in terms of how Iran is retaliating, not just against the US and Americans, in terms of, their air bases, but also Middle Eastern countries as well? And is this something that the Israelis had been anticipating?
I would say this. Your book, Biana, is called Don't Feed the Lion. This is exactly what the Gulf states have done for the last few decades. They were under the impression that they can actually sit in between the fundamentalists in Iran and the moderates in other countries, especially Israel, to have relationship, embassies open, and now we see that this relationship is hanging by a thread, to say the least. The UAE takes most of the fire first and foremost because it stands for everything that Iran doesn't. It's moderate, it's secular, it's prosperous, and it has a very good relationship with both Israel and the United States. And that's why it is in the receiving end of such a monstrous attack, which is aimed specifically in an attempt to hinder the number one value of the Gulf states, which is stability. When it comes to Qatar, however, I have to say this is it could have been amusing unless it was so tragic. Qatar was the number 2 funder of terrorism, second only to Iran, and all of a sudden it takes hits from Iran itself. So I do think it reframes the entire region. We should conceptualize the Middle East not as a Jews versus Muslims, but as fundamentalists versus moderates. And this is the number 1 donation of Iran, unintentionally, to the future Middle East.
Yeah, and now you're potentially dragging Azerbaijan in as well. Amit, I appreciate the book plug. Thank you so much. You said you're not going to spill the beans. I'm wondering if you can spill just 1 or 2 for us there, as you gave us a preview.
Sure.
In your newsletter. You end by saying this isn't the last surprise up the sleeve of the United States and Israel. And there is a lot of question going on here in the U.S. and around the world about, while militarily the United States and Israel may be in lockstep, that their end game, the goal here, the day after plan, may not be so closely aligned. So from Prime Minister Netanyahu's perspective, from what you're hearing, can you give us more insight into that, and perhaps that speaks to the beans that you say you can't reveal thus far?
So I wish I could. All I know from just looking at the situation is that there isn't any precedent historically for a regime change happening only by airstrikes. However, this is not the case like in Iraq. In Iraq, it took boots on the ground to actually topple the Saddam Hussein regime. Here, we have boots on the ground, the boots of the protesters, of those millions of Iranians that stormed the streets wanting change, and then being massacred by thousands by a hostile terrorist regime. So I think the number 1 issue here in the attack is how to connect these airstrikes with the protests. And I think there are many efforts being done. If you are looking for those beans, look for by those secret tied between Israel and the United States and the leadership of the protesters.
Yeah, and that's, the president initially, after the massacre protests at the beginning of the year, that was his call when he said that help was on the way. He alluded to that again in his video release once the war began and the U.S. began bombing Iran last weekend. Amit, quickly, I do want to get you to respond to what The Economist has been reporting and see if you can match this reporting. The Economist says that Israeli intelligence sources suggest that there are signs of Iranian soldiers and police officers and IRGC members failing to show up for duty. I'm wondering if you've heard the same from your sources?
I checked this report a few hours ago. Unfortunately, I don't have any confirmation for this, at least from the Israeli perspective. So if it's a significant phenomenon, it's still not seen by the Israeli intelligence, but even President Trump spoke about defections and the secret attempts to actually contact the United States in order to defect or to actually change the system from within. So I think there is more than meets the eye in that respect.
Yeah, and the U.S. has offered clemency for anyone who would put down their arms in the IRGC now. All right, Amit Segal, thank you so much.
Thank you, Amit.
We appreciate the time.
We'll be right back with more.
Thank you so much.